A quick note on CRA. We're a publicly traded global strategy consulting company with our headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts, and multiple offices across the US and in Europe too. Within CRA, there are more than 220 consultants dedicated to the life science industry, making it one of our largest practices. CRA has a wide variety of experience conducting engagements with both major life science companies as well as with smaller companies that might be bringing their very first product to market.
From your perspective, what are the most important factors for successful drug commercialization in the US?
It's a great question. First, I'd say that a company needs to have a solid understanding of their product and what makes it unique among the competition. Second would be developing an in-depth understanding of their customers. Third would be to develop a pricing and market access strategy which is closely aligned with their product's value. Then, as we get closer to launch, it's critical that there's alignment between the account teams that call on the access decision makers and the sales force that calls on the prescribers. Finally, all of these things need to be monitored closely, and any surprises might require modifications to the commercialization plan.
Could you tell me more about developing the product?
The first step in developing a product is understanding the product positioning. This entails understanding how the product compares to currently available options and where it can provide the most value in the treatment pathway. There are multiple ways a product can establish a niche. For example, does the product work best in a specific patient subpopulation or in patients with intolerance for certain medications or classes of medications? Once the positioning has been determined, the next step is to understand how to socialize the product benefits through brand messaging. With prescribers, these messages usually focus on sharing the clinical benefits that differentiate the product. Within the access decision maker space, though, the messages are a bit more diverse because the group of stakeholders is diverse as well and include managed care organizations, hospitals, and even imaging centers.
The U.S. healthcare market is known for its complexity. How do you define the customer in this complex landscape?
Defining the customer begins with first understanding the patient's journey. Each disease area is unique and shows variances in its customers and access decision maker dynamics. In studying the patient journey, it's necessary to understand all the key decision makers and the types of decisions that they make as well. Understanding the decisions in different types of customers along the customer journey allows us to identify key influence points where the unique value of the product can be turned into a competitive advantage. A savvy manufacturer might use these influence points to form the foundation of the customer engagement strategy, where the advantages are delivered as tailored messages that speak to the key questions in the key decision maker's mind.
How does a company go about establishing a pricing and market access strategy in the U.S.?
The U.S. is a free pricing market, which means that manufacturers are allowed to choose their price. This puts the responsibility on the manufacturer to find a price that will provide the desired market access for patients. Market access is a combination of clinical value, the price, and ultimately the restrictions that are placed on the product by access decision makers. To develop a sound pricing and market access strategy, we pair our understanding of how the money flows between the stakeholders with the value offered by the product. This provides us with guidance on how we can communicate the product's value to each stakeholder, given their motivations and their needs associated with the product. An additional tool we might use sometimes is a contracting strategy in order to adjust the product economics within a particular type of stakeholder.
Where should a company be 2 to 3 years prior to launch?
Ideally, at that point, the commercial team owns an overview of the product positioning options within the current marketplace and has a solid understanding of the niche filled by their product. Also, the key decision makers along the patient journey, such as the payers, the providers, the patients, the caretakers, should be mapped out, and they should have a solid understanding of the financial flows between these decision makers. In other words, they should really have a thorough lay of the land. In terms of next steps for a manufacturer, they're likely finding ways to penetrate into these niches through key influence points and developing a value story for the most important access decision makers.